So wait, you're in the media business around sports, and you bet on sports? Is that frowned upon, or did you fix any games?
Yeah, a bunch actually. Yeah.
Me and my buddy, we making all of this money. Yeah, I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us slacking. Me and my buddy, we working
Tristan, why
hard for
don't
this
you
money.
send us to the internet?
All right, guys, welcome back. Table One Podcast. Justin Young, Art Parmann, and I'm not sure where to point to, but Ryan Feldman is there.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Good, good. How you doing?
Good, good. Happy to be here.
Nice, man. Appreciate you doing this. So normally, the way we kick things off is kind of an introduction to you to our audience, and basically like you into the gambling world. So why don't you tell us about little Ryan growing up in Connecticut? Is that where you're from?
From Philly, actually, Jersey and Philly. I lived in Connecticut for work for a couple of years, but yeah, I grew up in Jersey and PA. Always wanted to be in sports broadcasting. First, I wanted to be an athlete, but then I realized that that wasn't going to be a thing. And
What
then,
was the sport of hope?
when I was a little kid, I played every sport really, but I would say basketball mostly. That was my favorite sport. But then I realized that I was you know, ended up being a 5'6", Jewish white kid, and it just wasn't going to work out as an athlete. So I shifted at some point to wanting to be in broadcasting. So I wanted to be some sort of on-air broadcaster, and that was kind of my passion for a while growing up, like in middle school and high school. And I followed that path into college, and I went to school at Temple University in Philly.
The
I
Owls.
Yes. Oh, good job. There you go. Nice. And I so I majored in broadcasting communications there. Um, did some things related to that there. I broadcasted the women's basketball games on the internet. I did some worked for like another website doing reports on games at Temple and other colleges in Philly. And while I was doing that, I learned how to play poker because that was '03 to '07. So that was right when the moneymaker boom happened. So I was in a fraternity and I saw, a bunch of my fraternity brothers playing poker. And I just from seeing them play got interested, and I would watch them play online, and they would play, $20 or $10 sit and goes or whatever it was that they were playing. And that seemed interesting to me. So I started trying to learn how to play. I didn't necessarily know how to use any resources to learn, but I was just learning from observing and watching them and trying to figure it out. And I was watching the World Series of Poker on TV. Just like many of us that I don't know how old you guys are, but that were around that same age. And it kind of just went from there. So I, followed the sports broadcasting route after college, worked in sports media for a number of years after. But while I was doing that, I was, playing poker on the side, whether it be online or, down at the casinos in Atlantic City. And I was trying to just, learn how to play.
What were your games of choice when you did go down and play in Atlantic City?
Oh, man, it's so long ago, I don't remember it really, but I would play just, I think like 1-2 or 2-5 cash games, or I know for a while I was playing some of those like daily tournaments that they had in the different casinos. They'd be $60 or $80 or $50 or $110, at Showboat or Bally's or wherever it was down in Atlantic City. And I would go down there for the day and play one of those. And if I busted one and I could go play another one, I would go play another one. And I know I was into tournaments for a while. When Borgata would have a series, I would go down to Borgata and play a tournament or two. I would never have any success in any of these things at all. Anytime that I made any money online, if I played on, Poker Stars or whatever site I was playing on, I would maybe run it up and then lose it all. Never cashed out once.
Love to hear those stories.
Yeah.
I hate the guests we have on. They're like, yeah, I put in $50 and I just turned it into $5 million. Like, no
Yeah.
big deal. What was your problem?
Yeah, you were one of the smart people that didn't go all in on poker and kept a job. So kudos to
Yeah,
you.
I mean, it was really smart. Whatever money I made in my job, I just lost to poker or sports betting.
All right, maybe not that smart, but you had another source of income at least, so you weren't a complete DJ.
Yeah.
So wait, you're in the media business around sports and you bet on sports? Is that frowned upon, or did you fix any games?
Yeah, a bunch actually. Yeah, yeah. I actually I grew up with a guy named John Tate Porter. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, yeah. Even so, I ended up working at ESPN. I got a job there in 2011, and I moved to Connecticut for 3 years, and then after that, moved to LA for 2 years. That's what brought me out to LA. And when I was at ESPN, I worked in research, so I was responsible for coming up with different stats and information that the on-air people would use on the air, whether it be nuggets that I would give them to just verbalize in the air, or graphics that we would build that would, appear on Sports Center. If you're watching Sports Center and they show a highlight of Lakers versus Nuggets, and after the game they show a full screen graphic and it says like, LeBron James now has this many games of 30 points and 15 rebounds in his career. This is where this ranks. These other people on that list. Like, that's what we would do. We would build those things. So I did that. And we also had a department we worked with that did way more analytical things, where they would like break down video and come up with like really advanced stats, like say the things you hear, like, when Patrick Beverly guarded, Luka Doncic in this game, he held him to 18% field goal percentage, right? Like things like that. And
so you were the guy. You're basically one of the guys that says whenever the Lakers play the Celtics on a Tuesday and it's snowing, they've never lost.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever amount of filters we need to use to tell the story, right? Like if you're an on-air anchor and you come to me and you say, hey, I need a stat that shows me that LeBron James is great, I give you that. And then if you're like, hey, I need a stat that shows me that LeBron James sucks, I give you that,
But did you know, like a lot of the Sports Center guys, the anchors, like the personalities, like not intimately, but like, did you have communication with them?
Yeah. I was
Or tell me which ones you hate. Tell me which ones you like.
Now there's actually some cool ones. There's a few that I don't keep in touch with any really, but there's a few that once in a while I'll, send a message to, or they'll send a message to me. Or I remember last summer I was in Vegas and I ran into one that's still like one of the big anchors there at Sports Center. And, he knew that I was doing this poker show and asked me about it and stuff. So that was kind of cool. Just to, anytime you connect with some of these guys that, I lost touch with, and,
So you're not going to name drop? We really want you to name drop.
I mean, you probably wouldn't even know who they are. They're not like the people that everyone knows are, like, right, like Steve, like Stuart Scott back in the day, or
Van Pelt,
Scott Van Pelt, or right, but like the guys that do the most Sports Center shifts probably are guys that you probably won't even know. Like there's a guy named Randy Scott, right? You probably haven't heard of him, right?
I actually have. I watch a lot of Sports Center.
Oh, you do? Okay, so like
I spend my entire life. I've spent a lot of time watching Sports Center on repeat.
Cool. Yeah, there's him. There's a guy named Max Bretas that used to work there. There's a bunch of guys. Zubin Mahenti. So a bunch of these guys kind of started around the time when I started there. So we were pretty good friends. Doug Gazarian, who now is the ESPN talent for their like sports betting shows, which is kind of cool because back then there was no sports betting shows, right? But now it's a big thing at ESPN. So he actually gets to live in Vegas. But yeah, it was cool working with all those guys. And I worked on a lot of college basketball at first, because that was kind of my passion back then, mostly college basketball and NBA. So I worked in the college basketball shows. So I worked with all those guys, Jay Williams, Seth Greenberg, Miles Simon back then, Doug Gottlieb, he left while I was there. So I got to work with all those guys. And then I transitioned out to the NBA Countdown in LA, and I started working with Sage Steele, Jalen Rose, Doug Collins, a little bit of Avery Johnson and Doris Burke. And so I got to work on that show for 2 years. So that was a lot of fun. What I was going to say, though, is that, I'm working in research, right? I have all these numbers. I have all this data available to me. So I thought like, oh, I have this edge with sports betting. I'm going to break down these numbers and come up with theories of like, when there's a good situation to bet on. And no, of course that didn't work. And I just lost more money. I remember one season, so we had like really good NFL numbers, right? And I remember one season I was like, I'm going to play DFS, right? And I'm going to use this to my advantage. And there's like these big spreadsheets that update, and you can literally look at anything you want. So, I would look at a matchup for the week. This team's playing this team. The Saints are playing the Eagles. Let's look at what the Saints are really good at or really bad at. Like, okay, they give up the third most points in the league to the receiver, the number one receiver that like lines up on the right side, right? Okay, who's the receiver for the team they're playing for the Eagles that's on the right side? Oh, that's this player. That's Devontae Smith. Oh man, and he, in the last 5 weeks is second in the league in fantasy points. So I'm gonna go big on this guy, right? And I would look for like sleeper picks like that, like guys that weren't that expensive in DFS. And I thought this was the strategy. This is gonna work. I did it for 6 weeks and realized like no, it's still not good enough. The DFS is just impossible unless you dedicate your life to it. So I just quit.
Yeah, honestly, as a gambler, like when you were talking about all these breakdown stats, I was like, oh yeah, you could use all these to go off and support.
Yeah.
So I also would have wasted many weeks of my time.
I
Probably more
spent
than you
so
did.
much time like looking into it while I was at work, mind you. Like I'm like sitting in the office, like getting paid, on the clock, and like I'm like, if anyone's looking, I'll just be like, yeah, this is work. I'm working on a big story I'm doing for NFL Live or something, But meanwhile, I'm just trying to rank my DFS guys for the week.
That's so great.
There's back in the day there was probably like 10 of us, but like we would do it for baseball for umpires. We kept all these stats on the umpires for over unders, like basically how often they called strikes, first balls, or whatever. And we just ranked everybody. And as soon as like I think it was 45 minutes before the game would go off, they would announce like who's behind the plate, and we would just snap fire the over or the under based on what umpire it was. We were fucking geniuses. We ran hot for a little bit, and then we basically ended up breaking even. But like, we were like, oh, this is gonna we can retire off this money. This is great. This is so easy. How has no one ever thought of this before?
Yeah, that's the worst part about finding some kind of edge like that is when it works for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's gonna cost you a year of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to take a quick break from the interview to tell you about a very special promotion that Table One is doing.
That's right. If you want to win 5% of me and Justin in the WSOP main event,
that could be up to like, I don't know, $800,000 if we get first and second, which we probably will.
There are a lot of ways to enter into the giveaway. We call it the swag and tag giveaway because you put on some Table One swag, you take a selfie, tag us, Twitter or Instagram at Table One Vegas, and that's it. That enters you into the contest.
Super simple, guys. It literally takes probably, I don't know, like even a boomer like me can probably get it done in like a minute and a half or something like that. So all you have to do is get some swag, get it online. You can go to the newsletter, or if you see Art and I out in the poker room somewhere, we have a bunch of patches just in our bag, just ready to give you. So if you see us, come talk to us.
That's right. You don't have to buy anything. You can just find us and impress us with a joke. No, you just have to
just say you like me. That's all I need.
That's really the only reason we do this podcast, so people will tell us they like us. So keep doing that, and back to the pod.
It was a lot of work to break even, but yeah. So this sounds like a pretty freaking sweet job to someone that's a bit of a fanboy to ESPN and the Sports Centers and all the shows they produce. So like, what kind of drug you away from that into poker gambling? Like, I know you were kind of like you were lightly playing on the side, but
yeah,
it had to like kind of pull you away.
So a few things. So the first few years I was at ESPN, I loved it a lot. Like it was like a dream job, growing up. ESPN was like all I watched. I was, a huge sports fan. When I got this job, I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm at ESPN's campus. I'm walking to lunch and I see, Jerry Rice or Keyshawn Johnson or whoever. And I'm like, wow, like, what am I doing here? This is amazing. The campus, I don't know if you guys have ever had a chance to visit the ESPN campus in Connecticut. They do like tours, but it's the coolest thing ever if you've never been there. And so that was fun at first. After a few years there in Connecticut, I realized, wow, like I have no life outside of work. I'm not doing anything. It's a boring place to live. I have no future here. I don't know what kind of upward mobility I have here. Like, what am I going to become? I'm never going to become rich working here. Like, I'm going to, be a producer maybe one day, a research manager. Like, I don't know. There was no excitement outside of, just like, it was fun to come up with story ideas, these big story ideas with a bunch of stats and, pitch it. And then it gets used on some big platform. It gets used on, NBA Countdown or on Sports Center or, an article on ESPN.com. Like that stuff was cool, right? But when you look at the future, where I'm living, where I'm going to go from here, it wasn't that exciting. So the NBA Countdown job came up. I moved to LA because, I thought, well, if ESPN doesn't work out, at least I live in LA. Like that's a fresh start. It's fun. It's good weather. There'll be things to do. We'll try that. And NBA is a bigger platform, so there's more of a chance to succeed there, I think. So that was fun at first. When I was out here, I got to go to the NBA Finals 2 years in a row, and it was Cavs Warriors. Got to go to do a couple other games that we covered as well. So that stuff was like a lot of fun. Got to work with some really cool people, working on the NBA. But outside of doing NBA content, my job wasn't that fun anymore. So during that time, ESPN started getting a bit more corporate. If you remember some of the news about ESPN back then, there were a lot of layoffs. They were making changes, and in my department, my job was secure, but I was one of the top performing people in my department for like 3 or 4 straight years. We had like a rating system. It's how we got our raises, and I always got the highest rating. So, I was doing well. So I wasn't going anywhere, but some of my managers got laid off, and the climate kind of changed. Now I had different people that I reported to or that I worked with, and it just slowly became not as fun, right? Like a job how a job feels like changes so much when the environment isn't fun anymore. You know what I mean? Like you could have a job where you don't make that much money and it's not that great of a job. But if you're in like the coolest environment with the coolest people every day, where you actually enjoy going to work because you love the people you work with, then you're going to be okay with it, possibly, right? So yeah, it's true though. For a lot of people, I think creating a great environment is a huge part of like creating a good business. And the environment just changed. It wasn't as good anymore, and they just changed a lot of different things, like, and instead of focusing on the fact that I was like on NBA Countdown, my primary job, like they loved what I was doing, like I was succeeding, I was doing well. Instead of that being the primary focus, they were focusing on other things that weren't really, in my opinion, relevant. Like, I would get my report on how I was doing, and they'd be like, well, you're doing great in your show, but you're not spending enough time mentoring this person in Connecticut that you're supposed to mentor, so we're going to give you a bad rating. And I'm like, okay, because of that, I'm getting a bad rating when my primary job every day that I work on the show, I'm crushing it. Like that's not good enough. So it just changed. And at the same time, I was playing more poker on the side. When I was in LA, it was easier to access the casinos out here. Like when I was in Connecticut, Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods were over an hour away. Out here, I could get to any of the card rooms in 20, 30 minutes. So it was different. And in that first year out here, I had a few friends that moved to LA from the East Coast that played poker. And, I started hanging out with them a lot. We ended up getting a house together, and all these guys were playing poker, and going out to clubs and whatever they wanted to do. right? But meanwhile, I had to wake up on Sundays at 7, 8 in the morning to go work in the studio in NBA Countdown. And, I realized like, damn, like I'm envious of the freedom that they have, and I would look forward to playing poker when I could play poker. And throughout that last year, that was like 2016, I started thinking about, do I want to do this anymore? Like, man, could I succeed if I left and started playing poker? If I don't ever take that chance, will I regret it? And I finally, by the end of the season, got the courage to do it. And I just, I decided like the summer's coming up after the NBA season ends. I want to be able to go to the beach. I want to be able to do things I want to do every day. I don't want to be trapped in a studio working on sports that I don't really want to work on, because once NBA ends, I'm working on baseball, I'm working on golf, whatever sports are going on during the summer. And that's just not that exciting to me. So, I got the courage to do it. In that July that year, I decided to walk away, and I just figured, I'll just take some time off. I'll play poker. If it doesn't work out after a few months, I have a great resume, and maybe I go get a job at Fox Sports, which is also in LA, which had gotten big over the last couple of years at that point. So I did it, started playing poker. It went poorly right away. I realized that I just wasn't rolled for it. I just wasn't in the right mindset right then to do it. I didn't realize all the things that you need to do. Like first of all, I just wasn't as good as I thought it was. Second, my discipline was terrible. I didn't have the bankroll to sustain it. Like, I just didn't have a great plan. And I was like, man, that was a bad idea. But now I'm here. And so what am I going to do? So I did that for a few months, and I was actually in like a pretty bad situation for a while there, where I had like no money, and I was sitting in the house that I lived in with these guys, and some other things went poorly. I remember at one point, I had chips in my house, and I was away, and they got stolen. I didn't know who stole them, but I was like, Jesus, I'm losing all this money, and now I just got money stolen from me too. Like, what do I do? So I'm just sitting there, in my house a lot of the days, like not knowing what to do with very little money, trying to figure it out, hoping that something just comes about. I would, muster up some money to play some small ACR tournaments to hope to like bink one. And I actually did somehow at one point. I got like second in one of the Sunday ACR tournaments for like 16K, and that was like the biggest thing ever for me, because I'm like, holy shit, like I'm out of the basement now.
Yeah, I'm back, baby.
Yeah. And I started playing, some smaller cash games in LA to try to build it back up. And I started getting a little bit of momentum. And then right around that time, when I just bounced back a little bit, the producer of Live at the Bike, who I had already been involved with, I'd played there a few times, I had commentated for them a few times, she announced that she was leaving. Nicole Juergens, she was in charge of Live at the Bike back then. She was one of the owners. She announced she was leaving, was stepping down, didn't want to do it anymore. And right then a light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. This is perfect. Like, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do. I've been sitting at home doing nothing for a few months, miserable. This is it. I have to get this. Like, I can organize poker games. I know so many players in LA. I have so many ideas to how to make their show good. There's so much potential there. This is like TV production, just like ESPN. Like, I can do this. And that's when, I started getting motivated to pitch to them that, I could be their next producer.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, your two areas of expertise. You don't have to be like the best poker player or the best TV producer, but like when you overlap them both, like your network really compounds, and you're probably one of the only people in the world that could like do that job the best, in that way.
Was there a lot of competition for the job? I mean, was it just like an interview and you got it, or was it just like, do you want this job, or what was the process?
So first, I had no idea like how their company even works. I didn't know who I needed to talk to. I didn't know if it was just like a job. I had no clue, right? So I asked Nicole, I believe, I said, hey, like, I just saw that you're stepping down. I would love to do this job. What do I do? Who do I talk to? So she told me who to talk to. This other lady, Evelyn, who was the biggest owner, the biggest shareholder of Live the Bikes company. And there was, I think, one, two, three, like three or four owners at that time. And so I put down a bunch of ideas. I went to her. I got her contact, said, hey, I want this job. Like, can I talk to you? I think I'd be perfect. We had a meeting. I pitched to her all of my ideas. And I said, just give me a chance. Like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And, she said, okay, I'll get back to you. So she got back to me and she said, okay, we're going to give you. So I have no clue to answer your question, I have no clue if anybody else was trying to get it. I don't know, if it was just as soon as she talked to me, she's like, all right, we got to give this guy a chance, or I have no idea. I would guess that at best there was like one other person that was vying for it. So she got back to me and she said, okay, we're going to give you 2 dates. And I remember it was the end of November in 2016. And she said, we're going to give you 2 days in a row. You can plan whatever you want, do whatever games you want, organize it, vote it, whatever you want to do. We're going to give you a chance to see what you can do. So my whole thing was that it was 2 things. It was one, that their games were too small. They didn't have any sizable games, and that people want to watch bigger games. Like, yes, you can get the local people, the subscribers, to watch your 5-5 games or 5-10 games because they can relate to it. But, you need a game each week that's, at this time, 25-50 was high stakes, at least in our streaming world. So, 25, 50, 50, 100 were really big games. And, I said, okay, you need at least 25-50 game. And they had never like done anything 25-50 or bigger almost ever. I remember they did one game the year before that during a tournament series where they had like Jake Schindler and Sean Winter and a couple other people playing. And it was like a big deal for them to do a game that big. So I said, you have to do something that big, and you need big names. You need recognizable names to play, to market. Like, it can't just be these local LA people that only people that watch the show know. You need big names. So they gave me these 2 dates, and I said, all right, I'm going to do a no limit game, and then I'm going to do a PLO game. I'm going to do 25-50 no limit, 25-50 PLO the next day. And I started seeing who I could get. I believe for the first show I had Ryan Fee and I think Alec Torelli as well. And I had just some other local people. But I had a bunch of recreational players that I got to play. And that was the key. I knew all these guys just from playing with them and being friendly with them the last few years in LA. And I went to them and said, hey, would you want to play 25-50? Like, usually play 5-10, but if this was the lineup, if these people play, like, would you play? And a bunch of them said yes. So I got a bunch of them to play and build around that. And then got Ryan Fee, and I believe Alex Riley was in that first one. And those were like my big names back then, Yeah. And this was like right when Ryan Fee and Doug had just started, building Upswing, and it was just becoming a thing. And the no limit game was like a big hit. It was it went really well. It's funny, I remember, I thought it was like such a big deal. I did this corny thing as an intro where it was so bad quality, but I hooked up like a sound system in like the actual studio, so it wasn't even connected to like the broadcast, and I played the Bulls theme, like the Bulls theme intro. Yeah.
Yeah.
And And I wrote out player intros, and I would read them off as they were coming into the room. So, and some of them were like jokes, and I'm like, blah, 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 this guy does this and this. Ladies and gentlemen, Israeli run.
That's great.
And so that was like our first high stakes game. The next day we did PLO. The PLO game was a challenge. It kind of fell apart as far as some of the guys that I wanted to play, and it ended up being almost all pros. I believe Bryce Yockey was in that, and it was just like a tough game, but it went. So we did it for those 2 days, and they saw what I could do, and so they wanted to keep me on board after that. And so they came back to me and they said, okay, like, we're gonna pay you this small amount to be the person that's in charge of scheduling. We're still figuring out like if we're going to bring you on as an owner or not. But until then, do you want to do the scheduling? And I said, sure. So now I was in charge of, scheduling the lineups for all the games. So I did that for about a month and a half into January. Now during that time, while I was like awaiting their decision, I proactively was like, okay, I'm going to try to see what I can plan, what I can build here, because, I want this job and I'm going to prove that, I can do this. So during that first game I did, where Ryan Fee played, I remember seeing Doug Polk in the Twitch chat, and he was commenting. He was watching his boy play on the show. And, again, Doug wasn't as big then as he is right now, but he was up and coming, like pretty big. He was a big deal at that time. People knew who he was. And I thought it was really cool that he was in the chat watching. So I believe I reached out to him afterwards, like on Twitter probably, and said, hey, saw you watching, like, thanks for watching. Like, hey, would you ever want to come play? And I said, we could do a big thing. Like, let's do like a Doug Polk week. And, you could play 25-50 one day and 50-100 another day. And we'll do a heads up, a series of heads up matches one day, because I know he's in heads up. And then we'll do like a meet and greet. And, Upswing can sponsor it. We'll do like this big thing. I hadn't told any of the Live of the Bike owners that I pitched this idea, but I just did it just to see what Doug would say. And Doug was like, that's amazing. I'm in. Like, let's do it. That's awesome. So now I went back to them and I said, hey, I got Doug Polk to play. I told him we can do this, this, and this. Is this okay? And they're like, yeah, that's great. So now I had this thing that I booked and planned. And that kind of, I think, is what sealed the deal of why they eventually brought me in and said, like, okay, we want to offer you ownership. We want to bring you in to be the full-time producer, because I had, proven to them that I could get this big name and schedule him for a week. So that's kind of where it all started, was Doug Polk week.
That's awesome. I mean, I wouldn't say that's where it all started. There's something that you said in there a couple times that was like a good framework for living, which I feel like you didn't just go, you heard about the producer job, you went right away to go see about it. You didn't just come with your resume, you came with like ideas to improve their show regardless. And then not only that, once you got your trial run, you saw Doug Polk, you were proactive with that. And I think people can learn like a shitload just from those little things, like just making yourself available. I mean, you took the smaller job just because you knew you wanted to get in and move up. I think it was really smart, like all the ways that you tackled getting into the industry in that way. I think that was really good.
Thanks.
Just a quick break here, guys. Are you tired of playing with players like this? Not this.
No,
like this? Or this?
Or do you want to play with players like this?
Oh, wait. If you like having fun at the poker table, Table 1 is the game for you. We play high stakes, no limit, 100 blinds. And if you want to get into the game, it's actually super easy. We have a website, table1.vegas. You just go to the website, you click get a seat in the game, and fill out the form. It's that easy. It's your name, it's your phone number, it's the date that you're here, and I will personally reach out to you.
And it's only $5K minimum buy-in. Run it up at 2.5 and join us.
Oh yeah, by the way, I left out one thing. forgot. So when I first, found out that Nicole left and I applied for that job, right? And I had to kind of like await finding out if I was going to get the job. So I had heard that there were prop players at the bike, right? Like that was a thing in LA. These players that, get paid an hourly rate to just play whatever game they need to play. So I, thought to myself, man, if I could get one of these prop player jobs, I'll be at the bike every single day. And that way I can show them like, hey, I'm here. I want to be here. I'm meeting players, like just another way to show them proactively, like, I want this, right? So I talked to, the person in charge about props and asked them how it worked. And they said, well, the props are just for limit hold'em. Sometimes you get to play no limit, but, it's primarily the point is to fill the limit games. And I was like, well, screw it. I'll do it anyway. I don't know how to play limit hold'em. I've never played before ever in my life, but I'll do it. And they hired me to be a 40-80 limit prop. So they're like, we need they had 20-40 and 40-80. They're like, we need 40-80. So I'm like, okay.
Game.
Which is, yeah, at that time was really big for me. That's like equivalent to what, like 5-10 or 10-20 or something.
Yeah.
So I had no idea how to play, but I didn't have a huge bankroll, but I took the job that said, you know what, I really want to get this live at the bike job, so I'm just going to do it. So I became a full-time prop at 40-80 with zero experience in limit hold'em.
What do they even pay you for that? I mean, your swings can't be really worth
I think it was like $30 an hour or something.
Okay, yeah, it's gonna be tough to overcome with no knowledge of the game.
That's a small blind. All right, cool.
yeah. I thought it was great. I'm like $30 an hour, and plus benefits too. I'm like, this is amazing. But yeah, I mean, that first month I did not do well. I was but I felt like I was really learning, and I mean, it was interesting to me, like kind of learning a new variant. Obviously, it has some similarities to No Limit, but it has some huge differences in the way you're supposed to play. So I quickly learned how to play. I actually researched it and studied and, did little things on the internet to try to learn. And, by the second month, I got way better. Like I was actually winning that second month, and the games aren't very easy, especially when you're playing against a few props most of the time. But I won the second month, so I started to figure it out. And then they actually got rid of the 40-80 game after that second month. And then I just started propping 20-40 after that. And then I was able to start playing more no limit. And then when the live of the bike job started, and then I became like a host for 5-10 no limit. So I only had to play limit for like 2 or 3 months.
So you crushed the game so bad they stopped playing 40-80. Wow, that's
exactly.
That
right.
should be the tagline right there. Ryan Feldman, so good at limit poker, destroyed the 40-80
definitely not.
into non-existence.
It was fun learning a game, but man, limit hold'em is so miserable. It's brutal. I don't know how people do it. It's crazy to me.
I like it from time to time, but I'm with you. Like as a full-time gig, it would get kind of old for sure. And those people get all curmudgeon-y and like,
yeah, so I'm saying like the people are on average are way more miserable. It was tough, but yeah, it's different. It was cool. So yeah, I did that as well during those few months, just to like I was just at the bike every day, and then that didn't stop when I got the live of the bike job. I remained a prop throughout my entire time as a live of the bike producer. That gave me some extra income because I wanted to be there all day, every day anyway, to organize the show, to find players. So I had kind of both things. I had the money that I got from being an owner plus the hourly that I got from working at the bike.
How did that work with the ownership? How many owners were there?
Let's see. At that time, there was 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there was 4, but there's technically 4, but there was this whole thing that happened with Lyman. If you remember Lyman back then, he is. He is Justin Lyman.
I don't know.
No, I thought maybe you would if you're like an old 2+2 guy or something.
Wait, what's his name?
Abe Lyman.
Lyman. I don't think no. Different Abe.
Okay, we don't need to get into all that, but there was like a whole drama that happened back then when I came on board. So he was an owner, but he wasn't doing anything. He was kind of just off to the side. So there's 3 of us that were active. myself
make
and the
you
director.
like buy in, or like you just like have a piece and
Yeah,
you work
so
on it, or
so it was weird. So what they did is like they told me basically the job was mine, but the way it works, like everyone's an owner operator. So like whatever equity you have is what you get paid out each month. So I got
hang on a second.
Time.
what happened? Oh,
Sorry, one of our lights
technical
fell.
difficulty for a second.
We need a better
Oh.
producer in here.
I saved Art's life.
All right, let's just hold.
All right.
All right. So how did it work?
Sorry about that.
So yeah, once they told me that they wanted to bring me on board, that I got the job, everyone's an owner operator. So basically whatever equity you have in the company is what you get paid each month. So I forget if it was 15 or 20%. I think it was 15% that I started at, that I was buying Nicole's shares. And basically they just like, she just came up with a price to pay to buy the shares. And it was like a very reasonable price. I think I paid like 15 or 20,000 for like 15%. It was like,
Wow, that's pretty nuts. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
So it was like very reasonable, and I just had to pay her that, and that got me my ownership shares. And at the beginning we were probably making my shares, I was probably making, I don't know, a couple thousand a month. I don't remember how much, but basically it probably paid back in like 6 months or less. So it was a fine investment. But that's how it worked. And basically just whatever equity you had is like what you got paid each month. So that kind of, fast forwarding a bit, that was kind of part of what got me to eventually leave there. Was I had the third highest equity, and I felt like I was doing the most work and contributing the most, but I didn't feel like I was getting like a fair share because of, because of a few different things, but in part because of the system that they had.
Got it. Okay. Interesting though. I mean, it's still a cool way to do it. Is that because of like California laws and being in gaming, or that's just how they ran their business?
No, that's just how they created their operating agreement basically back in 2005 or whenever they created it. So it was just a kind of system that they had grandfathered in, and I didn't think it was fair, and I felt like if you buy equity and then you work 40 hours a week, and then somebody else buys equity and they don't do much work, like, right, it's not fair. If you work 40 hours, you should be getting you should be getting paid something before you get whatever's remaining in your equity payouts, and that just wasn't the case there. So that was kind of one of the issues I had later.
How long did you stay on with them?
About 3 years. So let's see. So I officially became an owner in January 2017, and then actually I guess technically less than 3 years. So when I walked away, it was April 2019. April 2019. But then there was like a 6-month there was like a thing in the operating agreement where there's like a 6-month like transition out, unless they buy my shares before that. So I wasn't officially out till I think September of 2019 when they finally bought my shares. So it was like 2.5, less than 3 years.
So was the transition easy out of there? Was there any animosity or anything, or was it just kind of just?
I don't know if that was, if you, I felt like when you asked that, you were being sarcastic. You actually know what happened, but no, it was like terrible. It was terrible.
I like to lead people.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if you actually know.
A little bit of a troll, but yeah, I'm taking you down a path.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, because if you didn't, then it's kind of funny. No, there was crazy animosity. It was horrible. It was terrible. They were like the worst people to deal with.
So did you already have something else lined up on the transition out, or like when you decided to kind of cut ties, or what was it? Were you looking at 6-month period?
Okay, so right before that, I had all these issues for like a few months with the other owners. We were butting heads. It just wasn't going well. So Nick Vertucci was a player on our show, right? He was like a regular in the Friday game, and then eventually started playing Tuesdays as well. We became friendly. We became friends because he played in the show a lot, and he expressed interest at some point in getting involved, and he, loved poker, and he's a business guy, and he was starting to transition out of his real estate business, and he reached out to me at one point and said, "Hey, like, could I buy shares in this company and be involved? Like, I feel like I could contribute my business sense. Like, is there any opportunity? If there ever is, I would love to." Well, we were foolish at that time, and like, when there was an opportunity to buy equity, at least for me, like, I was thinking in my mind all the time, like, no, we got to bring in some really good poker player. Like, we got to have a poker pro as an owner, to, I don't know, contribute strategy to the viewers or whatever. Like, I wasn't thinking from the perspective of, no, we need someone who knows how to turn this into a good business. So we always just kind of like brushed it off. We're like, no, like, this guy, like, come on, like, what are you going to contribute? You're a recreational player, So instead, when we had ownership shares available, we brought on a couple guys who were really good poker players, but they never had jobs in their life. So they didn't know how business worked. But, now keep in mind, like, back then there was 3 of us that were owners before that. And, I, in a way, had the most weight because I came in this company when they were just, they were kind of an afterthought. And I quickly transitioned them from the stuff that I was doing, building these lineups, adding this 25-50 Friday game that we started doing every week, bringing in all these big names. I turned this into like a poker household name, so to speak, right? Like, everyone knew Live at the Bike, 2017, 18. I would go to the World Series. Everyone would be like, "Oh my God, that Doug Polk game was sick." Like, it was a big deal. And before that, it wasn't. So when I would have an idea or when I would say something, whatever it was, like, the other 2 owners, for the most part would be like, okay, like, he probably knows what he's talking about. Like, he turned our company around. Right. So when I would tell them, like, no, like, we need these guys that are good poker pros to come in as owners, like, they were probably just like, okay, like, maybe he's wrong, but we're just going to listen to him because, it's going well so far. So I did that, and without really thinking about the business aspect. And that's kind of when everything went south, when we started having issues, when we brought in these 2 other owners, and now we had 5 of us, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen, people that weren't holding their weight, people that, didn't know how business worked. And that's kind of when things fell apart, for me with them. And, but yeah, at that same time, Nick was trying to come on, and we kind of shoot him off. And, as things got bad with the other owners, and we started having disagreements and arguments, and I started feeling certain ways and felt like they're holding me back. I felt like, I wasn't getting compensated for all the stuff I was doing, all of that. I would vent to Nick and tell him, like, how frustrating it was. And Nick would ask me, like, why are you guys not doing this? Why are you not doing that? Why are you not selling ads? And I'm like, I don't know, man, that's not my department. I'm just doing the lineups, And, he realized that, like, we were just falling short, and I realized it too. So he told me at some point, like, hey, listen, like, if you ever decide to, like, walk away from here and leave here, I would love to start a show with you. I know that between the 2 of us, my business sense and your ability to produce lineups, that we could absolutely knock it out of the park, and we could go to any of these other casinos in LA and pitch it to them, and we would crush Live at the Bike. So he's like, just keep that in mind. If you ever, want to, I would love to, like, put the money up for the equipment and invest and do this with you. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, damn, like, that actually sounds kind of cool to have 50% equity in the company instead of 20%, to have only 1 business partner instead of 4, to be able to have somebody fund everything and not have, a company where I'm getting held back because they don't want to spend money and all they care about is what they get paid out that month. Like, we have all these ideas, we could build it from scratch. Like, man, that would be really cool. And so I started thinking about it, and I would think about that as everything was going south with the other owners, and I was getting frustrated. And this was at the exact same time, if you remember those, it was like $1 million cash games or whatever we called them at Live at the Bike at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, which was 100K buy-in, $1 million on the table. Like that was the big deal back then. Berkey was playing, the great Dennis Blyden.
Good name.
Yeah. Pour one out for him. Perkins played in one of them, Alex Foxen. So we had all these like really cool 100K buy-in games. It was a big deal back then. And at the same time, all this other stuff was happening behind the scenes. And I was like, what the hell? Like, we are absolutely crushing it. Like our like income is up like 2x from what it was 2 years ago, maybe 3x. Everyone's talking about our show. And yet like this stuff's going on behind the scenes. Like, this is so frustrating. So I gave my partners an ultimatum at one point. I just kind of like got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I sent them a bunch of old ultimatums. I said, listen, I want this, I want this, I want this. I either want to get paid a salary before equity payouts. I either want to be able to buy more equity, a few other things. And I said, if I can't get one of those things, then like, I'm going to walk away. And they just didn't believe that I was actually going to do that. And they didn't really counter with anything that I thought was any good. And at that same time, me and Nick had started talking on the side to some other casinos. I had met personally with one myself. Well, I guess it doesn't matter to say at this point, with Hawaiian Gardens originally. That was the one that started it. And I knew someone there. They got me a meeting. And I kind of framed it first as, hey, like, we might be able to move Live at the Bike here. Is that an option? Are you guys interested? It was kind of just like a meeting I had initially myself. And then but like I knew on the side, I was really like, so I actually organized a meeting with the Live at the Bike owners for it because I didn't want to like totally hide it from them, and said, hey, I got this opportunity. Like, let's go talk to them. We talked to them. But on the side, I said, hey, I'd rather leave and start this company with Nick potentially. So that was an option too. And then I had another meeting scheduled literally the day that I ended up walking away from Live at the Bike at Hollywood Park. And, I was kind of scared to send the letter and walk away, but I was ready to do it. And I said, okay, I'm going to go in this meeting. And if this meeting seems promising, if they're interested, if I come out of the meeting thinking like, wow, this might work, then I'm just going to do it. And so I went in the meeting with Nick. Actually, that one was with Nick. And the meeting went pretty well. They were interested. And when I left the meeting, I went in my car and I clicked send on the email to my partners and said, I'm out. And they couldn't believe it. They're like, wait, is this real? Like, no way. They like were like shocked that I was, the way they reacted on the email. But then it was like really, it was really hostile. Like right after that, like they immediately like got rid of my email address. They got immediately like started doing all of these things to try to like block me from being involved with them when I was still contractually involved because of how the agreement worked. So they like wanted me to like still work and plan games and stuff, but then at the same time they're trying to get me to like send them all my contacts, and I'm just like, hell no, I'm not doing that. But yeah, me and Nick started talking to couple different casinos over those next couple of months, but nothing really came about. It was like promising, but nothing concrete happened. And then at the same time, I started talking to a few months later, I started talking to the Live at the Bike management when they found out that I was going around to other casinos. And they came to me and they said, hey, like, what if we can have you and Nick start your own show here, and we can get rid of this old company, like, and we can have you be in charge instead. And I'm like, that would be amazing. Like, just on top of everything else, just to be able to like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just to like stick it in them, like that like, screw them, like all this stuff that happened. And then we go and literally like put them out of business and take over. That would be amazing. Right. So over the next few months, like I we were actually like talking, me and Nick were meeting with them. They were like scoping it out and like building this new room. Like they had someone come in and like, you know, how much it would cost to like build the room over here. And like, it was literally happening. And we were like, we thought on the verge of signing a contract to actually do it. And then the Apostle thing happened like that same day that we were about to sign we met with them. We were about to sign a contract and they asked us about that. And we were like, you know, they asked us, what is this? Like, is this a risk? You know, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, so the owner and CEO, and they wanted to like see what was going on with this Apostle thing because they thought that it would like hold back, you know, poker streaming. Like maybe there's not this potential for poker streaming to invest in something new if this is now like a big issue in the industry. So because of that, that kind of like delayed everything. And then eventually they got cold feet, and I think the previous owner like kind of made them change their mind, and they decided not to do it, not to go forward with it. So it ended up falling through kind of because of the Apostle thing. And then I stayed on board at the Bike as a host, just hosting big games there because I had all these players that wanted to play that didn't want to play on the show anymore, right? So I'm hosting games with them, trying to figure out what my next move is going to be. Then COVID hits. Then that stops everything. And then like 2 months later, Hustlers GM Sean reaches out to me and says, hey, we want to do a streaming show. We heard you're available. Would you be interested? And then we met with him the next day, and boom, that was it. That was when we realized that, you know, it was all worth it because this was like the perfect marriage. It was the one, you know, management group in all the casinos in LA who actually got it and actually like saw the vision that we saw.
So how long in between your the day that you walked off from the Bike in September when your contract actually ended to like, I don't know, when you had that meeting with the Hustler guys?
Sure. So well, when I walked away first, when I sent the letter, that was, I believe it was April 15th, 2019. I think it was like September 1st, I want to say, was when they finally bought me out. And by the way, the buyout price was like way, like I gave them a huge discount because I just wanted to get out because I thought this Bike thing was happening. So I just took whatever they gave me. But I remember actually there was a Helmuth game that I was already on the way out, but I had this relationship with like Helmuth and, you know, some other guys and Brandon Cantu and, you know, Randall Emmett, all these people that were like, that we had a chance to like plan this big game around at the end of August that year. So I was like, I'll do this game for you anyway, just because, you know, these are my guys. So I did that game. The next day is when they bought me out. So I think it was like September 1st, 2019. And then, so COVID hits in March. And then I want to say it was either May or June is when Sean reached out to me on Twitter. And then the next day, Sean's the GM of Hustler. And then the next day, me and Nick met with him. And that's when we realized, like, okay, so that was either May or June 2020. November of that year is when we signed the contract. So we had the plans already. We knew it was happening. But November is when we officially signed the contract for the show.
And then the first show aired
August of 2021.
Yeah.
So it was... So yeah, it was a little over a
long
year.
road.
You gotta build the room.
Yeah,
You gotta
I mean,
get
I'm sure there was
production.
some time in there where you were just like, man, did I make the right decision? Like this shit is not working out.
Well, once we signed the contract, I knew it. You know, I'm always like hesitant on these things because just with a bunch of things in life, like it's kind of the too good to be true, you know, philosophy, right? When you don't get a bunch of like great, like up until that point, like you don't get a bunch of great things in your life. You're like, is this for real? Is this going to happen? Like, I'm just going to wait. I'm not going to get too excited yet. Right. Once we signed the contract, I knew it was real. Like that was the moment when I knew like, okay, like this is actually happening. Before that, I didn't get too high. And then, you know, during that period, it was just all planning and what we wanted to do. And so, by, you know, March or April of that next year, we had them actually start to like build the set and like, you know, things were becoming real. And then maybe in May or June, we started rehearsing shows and we started training our staff. That's when it was like really real. Like we were in there every day, just learning. It was like boot camp. Like our tech guys would just teach our staff, like, and me, just how to do everything. And they were just, not yell, but they would be like, no, like, you got to do it this way. Like, no, do it again, just to like instill like how everything worked. And I'm glad they did, because, they needed to be able to take the training wheels off, so that like I could do it myself without the tech guys being there every day. So that summer we were just in there like a bunch of days every week, just doing a bunch of rehearsal games. I would organize games that, people would play on the stage, just so that we could like test out all the different production concepts and the equipment. And we pushed back the start date once or twice, because we wanted to make sure that we were feeling like 100% perfect before we do our first show. Like, we didn't want to come on the air and not know how to do everything yet. We wanted everything to be as perfect as possible on the first show and come out with a bang. So that's why we pushed it back as far as we did. And I remember that first day was like probably still, even though we've had all these big games, we've had the $1 million game, we've had, all these Mr. Beast games, all these cool games we've done. In terms of like the feeling and the emotions of like that day and thinking about things, I think that first show we ever had was like the moment. Like, that was like the most emotional I've ever been. It all hit me. I was like, oh my God, like, we actually did it. Like, holy shit, like, this is actually real. Like, it's not too good to be true. Like, it's actually a real thing. Like, we had this vision and it's here, and now we're literally going to put it on the internet and people are going to watch. Like, that was number one probably of my career.
And watch they did. You got the highest rated show. And how many viewers do you guys get like on average on an episode now?
Like a normal show, a normal stage show, we probably get concurrent like 5,000 is like normal, 6,000 is like normal, 4,000's on the low end of normal. So yeah, somewhere between 4 and 6, I would say. And then, in the bigger games, like a Wednesday or a Friday game, we're getting, anywhere from 7 to 10 in a normal show.
That's great.
Yeah. And then the rewatchability, some of those have like 500,000 plus, I feel like, views on the big games, the big highlight reels that you guys do.
Yeah.
So from the first game till now, there's just been no drama. It's been great. That's pretty great, man. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm
Yeah, we're all about drama free. Yeah, exactly. We look for the most boring, zen, nonchalant, people we can find.
So what would you say the most watched hand of Hustler Live is?
I mean, come on, it's got to be the Robbie hand, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. I've heard of her. Yeah.
Yeah. You're the worst. Oh my God.
How many years would you say that one hand took off your life?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh my God, that was a. Yeah, people always ask me like, "Are you glad it happened? Are you? Was it worth it? If you could go back." Honestly, like, I still probably wish it. Well, okay, there in some ways I'm glad it happened, because there's a lot of good that came out of it. But overall, like, just what we went through and the feeling of everything over those next few months, I probably wish that never happened. But I also, am glad that some of the things that came out of it in terms of like changes we made and safety protocols and all of that. So I'd say I wish that we had those things all in place before that, and that hand never happened as well. It was just, man, it was miserable. Like, just seeing the comments from people all over the place. And I don't think it affected us much in terms of like players, because all the players that were already part of our crew, like, they trusted us, they had our back, they supported us. They knew there was nothing going on or anything like that. But, just the people that don't really know us, that are out there, spewing on the internet, like, yeah, that part was just horrible. And it affected, luckily for me personally, like, I pride myself on being quite like mentally strong with things like that. But some of the people that are like part of our crew, like, aren't necessarily like that, and it affected them a lot, and it just kind of sucked to see that.
Yeah, it's so funny how the like public, I mean, obviously everybody at the poker tables was all talking about it, but like how the public perception shifted like so fluidly. It went from like 90-10 definitely cheating to like 90-10
Yeah.
definitely not, like not every single day, but like just kind of it would just swing.
Yeah, like it's just a sewing circle at every single poker table. I know it was for us anyway. Like it was the topic like every day for like 2 weeks straight, and it was, you know, everyone had an opinion, and like whatever opinion was, it turned to gospel, and it was like, well, this person said it had to been cheating, so I trust this person, so it must be cheating. And this person said it wasn't cheating.
Yeah.
He's a moron. So like, you know, it's it was there's something special for us to all
Yeah,
like
I mean,
debate.
if you hear Doug Polk say, 90% that you cheated, like how can the average poker fan like not listen to him? Like he's one of the most well-respected people in the industry, so it's tough.
But yeah, these are just like reasonable guesses though. Like this is all
like what is a percent? You know what I mean? Like it either happened or it didn't, right? Like I don't know. That was my whole thing is like, yes, like you can put a percent on like if you what your mind is if you think it happened or not, but it's like, it's not you're not getting it all in on the turn with a river card to come. Like there's no like luck involved with whether this happened or not. Like it literally either happened or it didn't, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a crazy process. It was definitely interesting to see so many people with big followings, people that aren't even just in poker, just talking about it. Yeah, I mean, I had people come up to me afterwards that aren't poker players that would like ask me about it, like, oh, what happened with the Robbie hand? Like, what's the deal with that? Like, and I would be like, wow, like, how do you know about that? Like, that's crazy. Just like mainstream people, that I would interact with, and I'm like, what the hell, or friends from back home or something. But yeah, I mean, look, I didn't so much mind like just the gossip of like, did she do it or not? Because honestly, like if this sounds crazy, but at the beginning, if it came out, somehow there was like some proof that this kid that worked with us like did this and he confessed or it came out or whatever it was, like honestly, like it probably would have been a better resolution. Like it would have been like a huge relief for me and Nick just to know, because like on the other side, like we'll never 100% know, right? Like because nothing did come out, but if it did come out, then we know, and it would have been like, okay, it's put to bed. Like we finally found out what happened. Like, let's do something about it and let's move on. The part that really
you guys can do is ramp up your security in different random ways that'll just be
right. And like, and even by doing that, like all the like extreme haters are still going to hate, right? It's not going to change anything because we could have like amazing security and protocols going forward, but they're still going to go back and point and be like, yeah, but this happened and they had this and she had this ring on and whatever, so this Faraz Jaka patch, it could have vibrated, but
perception of reality is more important than reality sometimes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Right. Like a lot of things we're doing, right, like are more towards the side of optics than like actually, stopping something for sure. But you have to do those things to make people feel safe when they play. And the reality is that it's never going to be a 0.0% chance that someone, doesn't cheat. I mean, look, like you guys are playing a live game at, in the casino, and there's still not a 0% chance there. And that's the safest place there is, right? Like
that's very true.
It's just, yeah, there's the percentages are higher if you're in a home game and, there's this element and this element, right? There's a higher chance if you're in this. It's just, yeah, there's things that add percentages to the chances of it being completely secure or not, but it's never 0%. And it's just, we can only do so much. So we tried to do as much as we could afterwards to make our players feel secure. And, yeah, like some of it was also at the beginning to, okay, like we want to put these optics out there to show people in the world that like we are secure, we're taking this serious, and we care a lot because it's important. But the most important thing is the players, right? Like if players will show up and they feel safe and they trust us and they know that everything is like legit and they trust the other players are playing with, right? That's the number one most important thing, in our opinion. And so after a while, we realized, like, you know what, like, okay, these people are saying something on the internet, they're complaining, they're saying this, but we have, like, and I obviously would handle this a little better than Nick. But I would have to tell him, be like, listen, just like ignore these people, dude. Like, please don't respond. Like, it doesn't matter what they say. Look, we are getting 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 people, like even more for a few months after that, people were watching them before. People are watching our games. Our players are coming. The action's great. Like who cares? Like, let's just ignore these people. We know that we're doing things the right way.
I like that. All right. Let's end on a positive note. I wanna ask you, what do you think you do differently than other like game runners? Like, I don't know if you know, but Justin and I, we run a game on Table One.
Yeah, of course.
Private game, not a stream game, but we do a lot of media, and obviously we have this podcast and try to put together as good of a game as we can. But we don't have as big of an advantage as you guys do with your huge network and huge just platform that you guys have. So what do you think, other than the platform, that you do a bit differently to get better games?
So, man, I don't think there's like a bunch of specific, strategic things that I necessarily do. But I think that, for one, I just have like real relationships with a lot of these guys that play. So it's not like, most of these guys that are playing, like, they know, like, it's not like fake. It's not like, I'm like using them for something or something like that. Like, like me and Nick, like, we actually like hang out with a lot of these people. Like, we actually like do stuff outside of the poker games. We have events once in a while. They'll like call me up and start telling me about something not related to poker, like their vacation or their marriage or, whatever it is. Right. So we build like real relationships, real friendships with these people. And I think that makes it easier to like put games together and play and then these people also all become friends. Like, we build this community, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just like, all right, this guy plays this day and this guy's going to play that day. Like, no, like, these guys all enjoy being together. So there's this community where, they don't feel all the time like the sense of, okay, like, I'm just going to like take this guy's money. Like, no, they're like, I like sitting at the table with this guy because I enjoy my social time with him. And I think that's how a lot of people in poker are, like, they don't care as much about the winning and losing as, am I enjoying my few hours sitting here with this group of people? And so I think there's this great community that we've built. What else? I think I just understand, how to build lineups and how to make them fun. I think, I kind of start from the bottom up. So I'm trying to build games with the softest players first and trying to build around that. And, I try to not, like, I don't start a lineup usually with putting, tough pros in, people that, people fear, that people don't necessarily want to play with. I start with seeing like how many of the recreational players I can build first, who I can build that around. And if I get, 4 or 5 of them, now I can go to some other guy and say like, hey, I have this group of 5 people, like, do you want to play? And then I think, the people that do get seats that are winning players, so to speak, or good players, I try to find people that are like entertaining and wild and play a lot of hands and fun to play with. And so, I think just understanding like how to build the right game. Like, I'm trying to build private games that happen to be streamed on TV. And that's the thing that, like, people that are watching have to understand sometimes. And sometimes they're like, oh, I want to watch this big name. I want to watch Jungle Man. I want to watch this guy. I want to watch this guy. Well, look, like, if I start with building with those guys, like, I'm just not going to have a game that often. And so I would rather have a juicier game that everybody wants to play with and everybody's going to beg to get in than and get like 2,000 less viewers than have a tougher game where it's like hard to fill, and the recreational guy in the lineup is going to get absolutely destroyed. I try to build long-term games where people feel like they can keep coming back every week and have a chance, and like where everybody at the table looks around and they're like, oh, I have a chance to win here. I'm not the worst. And so we're trying to build something long-term that people can enjoy and keep coming back to, because look, we're the only stream that's doing 5 days a week, right? All year, like 49, 50 weeks a year. We've been doing it for almost 3 years, like 700 and something shows. It's hard to do, right? But if you build games where, a couple of your important guys get killed huge, the gameplay is huge, they get killed like that first game, then like you lose them, right? But if you build games where, it's more of an even playing field in whichever way possible, the stakes are more reasonable, the lineups are more reasonable, then, those guys keep playing. And now, you have that, recreational guy for many months, and he keeps coming back because, he loses 10K, 20K a month instead of losing, 50K right in that first game. So yeah, I'm just like thinking about all those like long-term things, how to build and maintain, because, I would probably possibly do things differently if we only had one game a week, but when we have 5 games a week, like, we have to think about the long term. And yeah, and it's constantly like adding to the player pool and trying to evolve, and it's just a lot of networking too. Like during COVID, I went out there and I actually went to like a lot of private games, and I was meeting people, and I was willing to lose money myself to just to meet people and to get people that would be on the show, right? And I'm constantly trying to not as much these days, but still like I'm networking, trying to like meet people. And if somebody sends me a message on Twitter, I'm not just gonna like blindly let that person play, right? I'm gonna ask them a bunch of questions. I'm gonna like try to like snoop around, see who else knows them. Hey, is this guy good for the game? Like, how is he? Is he a pro?
Speaking of that, how do you because like obviously we run every day during the summer too, and then 4 or 5 days a week apart from that, but like you must get like a shitload more people wanting to play. How do you like delegate that and like deal with it? Are you just like constantly on your phone? Do you have somebody that like does the basic of the research, or what do you do?
No, I do it all myself, but yeah, some of it is just like gut feeling from like reading the way someone writes something or like what they say. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but when someone sends me a message or when I ask them a couple of questions, I can kind of just tell the way they answer, like if this person is some, online pro from Germany, or if they're, or if they're a lawyer, that barely plays poker. Like you can just kind of tell the way they say things. So that's just like, I guess, experience and gut. And but there are some times when I just give somebody a chance, and I'm just like, all right, like maybe this guy's cool, like I'll give him a chance. So I'll throw him in on a Wednesday first, because Wednesdays are the toughest games, and let's see. And if this guy is like amazing for the game, then I'm gonna let him play any day he wants. But we kind of like start from there. Like I'm not gonna take a chance on somebody very often in our juiciest games. Kind of can build their way up, but yeah, there's no direct formula or direct answer for like how to do it. It's just like, I guess, experience over the years and kind of gut feeling of like how I think things should be. And look, I'm building these lineups for the show that I'm not playing it, right? Like I don't play very often on the show. I probably play like 20 to 25 times ever in almost 3 years. But when I'm building these lineups, I'm building them primarily thinking about like what I want to play in this game. Like, how do I build this lineup so that it's fun enough for me to play, right? And I build it that way, even though I'm not playing in it, because yeah, I need to make sure that it is appealing enough of a lineup and the way it's constructed that, you know, everybody in the game is going to enjoy playing and nobody's going to feel like, you know, they're getting destroyed.
Okay, that's a good answer.
It's good. Do all that.
Do all
I don't know. I probably mostly talked in circles there, but hopefully that made
No,
some
no.
sense.
Like I think the first thing you said is the most important. In all honesty, I think instead of feigning being people's friends or whatever just to get their money or whatever, actually developing relationships with these people. And obviously, you're not going to love everybody, but like it's the game's so much more fun when like whatever you go grab a drink later or dinner or whatever. Like I know you guys do vacations here and there. Like that kind of stuff is pretty cool to me.
I think also just you know, I mean, this part maybe can be construed as fake sometimes, but like I think one thing that I am good at, I guess, compared to like a lot of other people, is that well, for one, I'm able to like tolerate people better. Two, like I know how to like say the right things to, you know, whatever situation it is with a player to make them feel better, to, you know, diffuse a situation, whatever it is. I also understand how to tell people no. So it's tough sometimes because I really try to be like nice to everyone and I don't like confrontation, but there's ways to do things and I find ways to say no to people, and that's part of the job, right? And you have to know like who, like, right, if there's like a scale, if somebody's really good at poker and they bring nothing to the table, they're not entertaining, they don't have a following, there's like literally nothing they offer to the game, I can just say no and it doesn't hurt me at all, right? Like it's okay, like who cares if they don't like me, right? But you know, if there's on the other side, like if there's a guy who, you know, the game's full and this guy's like really good for the game and, you know, he's not a really good player, and, you know, or this guy really wants him to play, right? Then I have to find a way to get him in the game because that's important to show that like, yeah, you want to play anytime, I'll get you in. And now I have to figure out a way to tell somebody else in the game, like, hey, I really need this seat. I overfilled it. Like, let me do you a favor instead. I'll get you in this other game instead, or I'll get you in these next 2 Wednesdays instead. I'm really sorry, I owe you one. You know, and you have to figure out how to figure out those situations so that happens all the time, where I have to figure out how to get this guy in, how to get this guy out, how to make this guy happy, you know, how to not piss off this guy, right? All those things juggling at once is like impossible, but that's the thing that I think is probably the most important, right? Like, yeah, like imagine if you guys have a game tomorrow and you have a lineup set and you have it like 3 hours before, and then all of a sudden, and like everybody in the game's like either someone close to you or like pretty good for the game, right? There's like no like complete weak spots that you can just easily dismiss. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, this god an hour before is like, yo, I'm in Vegas, like I'm drunk, like get me, like I want to play, I got 100,000, right? And you're like, oh shit, like we can't say no to this guy because if we say no, he's gonna go over to Bellagio and play, right? Yeah. and you have to figure it out, right? But you're like, man, okay, well, if I tell this guy that he has to get up, then he's gonna get pissed at us, and we don't want to hurt that relationship. This guy's cool about it, but he's really good for the game. So now you guys have to figure out like, what's the best solution here? How do I do this? And that's the part of the job that's one of the hardest is how to figure out those impossible situations where you don't piss people off, you make everyone happy, you make the game as good as possible, and you like protect yourself long term.
I'm glad we share some of the same pain points
because
I'm just like, I'm just waiting for the solution, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I got to figure it out.
That's like a kind of a good problem to have, right? The bad problem is really when like you have this cool lineup together and then one guy doesn't want to play with this guy and says I'm not playing if he plays, another guy says I'm not playing if this guy plays, and you have to deal with those kinds of things, right? And you're like, what the hell? Why can't everyone just get along?
We have a particular set of people that they
I had to deal with things
for
like
the game
that.
and they don't like each other.
Imagine doing $1 million game where you have to get people to bring cash or wire, and you know you're on the verge of a lineup like falling apart and people berating you if you have to cancel a game or something, and you have that situation where you have multiple people wanting or not wanting a certain person.
That's true. We're not in the spotlight at
Yeah.
least, so that's
Yeah.
good. That's
Yeah,
the
that
benefit,
was-
an advantage we have.
That was prime stressful, but yeah.
All right. Well,
Well, man, thank you.
this is cool. Anything? What are the big games coming up on Hustler that we can tout to our growing audience?
Well, we just finished that Neymar game. We had the $1 million game a few weeks ago. We're taking off for 2 weeks after this week, so that I can come out there to Vegas and visit you guys and play the World Series and play the main event and hang out and socialize. So, much needed 2 weeks off for all of our staff, and then we'll be back in mid-July. We don't have anything big planned right now. We just had all those big games we just finished. But we'll see. There might be some guys, that are in Vegas now that once we get there, we're able to like organize something big, something fun, maybe later this summer. But yeah, I'm looking forward to some time off.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you have my number now. Text me when you're in town, and we'll get you in at table 1, buddy. Come network and socialize with us.
There's a dinner and drinks as well. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
That's the fun.
Yeah.
Me and my buddy, we making all of this money. Yeah, I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us slacking. Me and my buddy, we working hard for this money. Whoa, you know I've been in my bag. Buddy, I got it like that.